Welcome to the Winning in Business podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Rissy, and I love talking to business professionals, leaders, and entrepreneurs who are winning in business. Are you ready to reach your next level of success? If so, join us on the Winning in Business podcast as I interview entrepreneurs, business professionals, and leaders who share how they've risen to success. Before we begin, go ahead, hit subscribe and the notification button so you'll be notified each time a new episode is released. Plug in and settle in. You're about to be inspired to rise up to your next level of success. Welcome back to another episode of Winning in Business. Today, I am so excited to be here with Pam Wilson. Welcome, Pam.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kelly. I was really looking forward to this.
Yeah, so let me tell you all a little bit about Pam. So Pam helps people discover and use their voice through storytelling. She is the founder of Wilson Mentoring and Writing, LLC, where she's a freelance writer, creative content writer, creative development, book and writing mentor, and ghostwriter. Pam has been a freelance writer for St. Louis Magazine, Lifestyle Publication, Swim Bike Run, and the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. She also has experience as a radio commentator on 590 AM The Fan. And in 2022, she became a certified whole brain practitioner. Pam says yes to most things and then figures out how to make it happen. She loves to bike, read, travel, dance, bake, hike, and practice yoga. One day, she hopes to live on or near a beach. Me too, Pam, me too. So I feel like we have a lot. First of all, congratulations on all your accomplishments. So tell us, how did you get into being a freelance writer, like loving writing, doing it as a business, a career, and then also weave us into your the whole brain practitioner, because I'm very curious about that as well. So tell us, how'd you get into doing what you do?
Well, I have been a writer and storyteller my whole life. I actually have memories of myself writing stories with colored pencils and crayons. And I was very creative growing up. I grew up here in St. Louis, and I'm pretty sure that nobody quite knew what to do with the creativity. And I just kept writing. I would write stories all the time. And I did go to Mizzou to get it in the journalism school, and I did not get a grade in Spanish that allowed me to get into journalism school. And so I had a backup plan. My grandmother recommended a backup plan, but then I kept writing and I kept writing, and I had kids. So my whole plan in high school, way before Sex and the City, was to write for magazines and live in Chicago or New York and meet lots of people. And of course, my life took a completely different turn. And it wasn't until I had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I was injured, and somebody said, "What is it you've always wanted to do?" And so I said, "I've always wanted to write." And at the time, my friend Jenny was writing for Savvy Family Magazine, and I sent them a couple of my articles. And I called the column SOS from Suburbia because that had come to me. And they said, "Yes, we would like you to be a monthly columnist." And so I began writing about raising kids in suburbia. It was always funny. It was always something going on in our world. I was always the Lucy in the stories, always. The kids were always teaching me something. Anything you can imagine, I wrote about for 14 years. And the kids really didn't know any different. They thought everybody's parents wrote about them. And I'd leave the magazine on the counter so anyone could read it. I was very respectful of the kids. We had different last names, so unless you knew us, you did not know that their mom was a writer. But the people who did know, they would comment to my kids. And it was really, really fun. It was a perfect creative outlet. I had a number of editors. In the very end, I had an editor named Janice Denham. Think Lou Grant and Candace Bergen combined. And she taught me to write a features article. So once I began writing, I could then say to other publications, I'm writing a monthly column. So I wrote for many other local magazines, some online work, and it gave me a lot of confidence in the skill that I had always had. So I didn't go to school for the skill, but it was a skill that I always have. And what's really interesting is that I can read something and I can tell how it needs to be edited. Not with punctuation. I rely on computers for that, but actually smoothing out stories and making things make sense. And a couple of years ago, way before the pandemic, I happened to be at a coaches meeting with some friends, And somebody in the publishing world said, hey, would you be willing to be a book coach? I'm like, yeah, what is that? And she's like, I don't know, we'll figure it out. So it's a local company here in St. Louis. I was their very first book coach, and I was on a ghostwriting team for Tessa Greenspan's book, which was amazing, an amazing experience. I edited anthologies. I worked with a number of writers, and I found that I was really good at it. And it kind of surprised me because I also went to WashU. I have an MSW, a master's in social work. And so every time I go in and out of the social work world, I come back out because they don't know what to do with creativity. And it's a great degree to have. And I'm so happy and proud of myself that I have this degree and I'm a licensed social worker. But writing, really and truly, like you discovered, it is my actual passion. It is my heart and soul. So along the way, I began writing a blog. When the Post-Dispatch, the column ended up in the Post-Dispatch, which was such a homegirl experience, very Sex and the City. I learned to write features articles. I began writing a blog. And then that blog stopped because I was done with that. And I have since gone back to writing personal narratives, travel blogs, and I also interview on the StoryCorps app. So I am constantly looking for stories. I'm constantly wanting to tell other people's stories and help other people tell their stories. I was using the word storyteller for a very long time, and it's a very apt description of me. I am a storyteller through and through. I love telling stories, and people always say to me, well, what do you hope happens with these personal narratives and travel blogs? And for me, I put them into the world. People can respond to them, and it always makes people smile or say, oh, I went through that too. And also, real honestly, I keep saying this, I'm hoping Reese Witherspoon or Sarah Jessica Parker or somebody finds these personal narratives and say, yes, that is a perfect HBO series. Yes, that's a perfect Netflix series. And you know what? I had a life coach say to me, just keep putting that out in the world. So I am. I just keep putting that out in the world. Everybody has a story, and I so appreciate that people allow me to tell their stories and help them write. And I also really like writing about my life because it helps me process what I do. I also have a facilitated writing group, which I created. I blended social work and writing. And then I did start a writing company 2 years ago. And then last year I began as a certified whole brain practitioner. So the writing sort of lends itself to whole brain thinking. Whole brain thinking is about your thinking preferences. And when I took the certification course, they had never certified a freelance writer, and they'd only ever certified one other social worker. And at the end, they said, what are you going to do with this? And I said, well, I'm going to write about whole brain. I'm going to write about the strategies that people use. I'm going to write about whole brain thinking and what it can do for us, as well as I can do workshops in companies and organizations. Basically, whole brain thinking enhances communication, relationships, team building, innovation and change, and work-life balance. So it is how I'm living my life. And when I got certified, interestingly enough, my aha moment with that was when I took an assessment, and it turned out that I was very creative. And it sort of validated everything I knew about myself. And I will tell you really quickly, when I was in college, I lived with my dad in Fort Lauderdale for a summer, and I took a creative writing class. And I handed him some of the things I wrote, and he said to me, oh, I get it now. So I don't really need validation from anybody. But it was nice that at least all of my life, nobody could quite understand why I wanted to do what I was doing. And when I was in my 20s, that happened. And also, it's kind of interesting when you put something out into the world and people have some kind of response to it. It can help somebody. It can make somebody smile on a day that they need to smile. Telling stories about your family, they were such amazing stories. I mean, I wrote about just everything you can imagine. We planted chocolate chips and chocolate chip cookies grew. I talked about my daughter auditioning for the Muni, my son who wanted a double barrel bat when he was 10 years old that cost $150. And as a parent, how I responded to that. So it was really fun to write about being a parent and being a family here in St. Louis in suburbia. So the personal narratives now are really and truly about my life. In fact, 3 weeks ago, I took a webinar on unsticking your story. And I had a huge aha moment. It's on my website right now. It's called Unsticking My Story. And it was a webinar. I was on my phone with Zoom, and I had this amazing aha moment. And I wrote I mean, I couldn't wait. I got home. I was somewhere else. I got home and I wrote the entire thing. Took a couple of versions.
Yeah.
But I wanted other people to know that you
Mm-hmm.
can unstick your story
Yes.
with a little bit of help. So that's what the personal narratives are about. And the travel blogs are not go here to do this. It's more like, hey, I'm standing at the bottom of the Rocky Steps at the art museum. Here's a selfie. And then I'm like running up the steps and I take a picture up there. So I write about the adventures I have when I'm traveling. I'm I'm really and truly a story, really and truly storyteller.
Yeah, yes, it sounds like I love that. And people love reading stories. I feel like we're in such a day and age where like are just thrown at us, right? And so just reading a story is nice.
With a beginning, middle, and end that
Yes.
always had something that either I've learned or I've learned from someone else. That was a great thing about writing about families and kids is that they were always teaching me something
Hmm.
and I got to learn along with them. And that was a true gift. That was really and truly a true gift.
And we also know that people learn better or will remember a lesson through stories more so than just like a point about it or whatever. You know what I mean? You tell it in a story and they're going to remember the lesson more. So that's awesome. So for you, someone who's winning in business, tell us some ahas that you want to share with the audience that have contributed to your success.
Well, my ahas are both positive learning experiences. Well, you know what? They're all going to be positive. When I started the writing company, I really and truly thought I was just going to hang my shingle and I was going to be flooded with business, and I was not.
Hmm.
Um, and I tried a couple of things writing, and I failed fast, which I learned was a business term. And
Yes.
the aha moment was even though you can do something, doesn't mean that you should. Even though I can write for websites, I don't like it because people say they want one thing and you write it and they want something completely different on websites, blogs
Mhm.
for other people. I am very good at retaining somebody's voice. If you hand me a blog, I can retain your voice. I can also help you find your voice. And so I was really glad that that happened. And as that first year went through, I learned what I really wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, which was for me a very aha moment because I'm telling you, I really thought I was going to create this business and I was going to be as busy as ever. And not being busy made me research more, connect more. I was networking like someone finally said to me, you need to stop networking. All you do is network. And that was a good aha moment too. Um, and then when I decided to be a certified whole brain practitioner as a licensed social worker here in St. Louis, again, I thought I was just going to go out and tell people about it. I did talk to a number of people that were very interested in it, but it didn't quite work how I wanted it to work. We live here in St. Louis. I don't really think that big businesses were going to say, yeah, come on in, we love you. I think it was going to be small and medium-sized businesses. And being a creative and a social worker, I had to learn the business of business, which I did on an online networking group, which I will forever be thankful that I did that for the year. I learned what I needed to learn and I learned what I didn't know. I would much rather tell someone about something and them say, oh, yes, please come in and do that. I learned how to follow up. I learned how to get the no. I would be like, I'm not going to call them back. I don't want to. And the facilitator was like, you need the no. You need the
Hmm.
no so that you can move on. So I also learned that by getting the no, it opened doors for different kinds of energy. And I still think I was talking to somebody a couple weeks ago, and this is another aha moment. I never realized how smart I was. And I don't know if people say that or not, but I grew up with very, very smart friends, very smart. I mean, very smart. And I was creative and I was kind of the one thinking about things to do. And you guys, let's all go do this. It took me a long time to realize that I'm actually smart too. I may need to learn some things to be a businesswoman. However, I really learned to rely on myself and to listen to my gut. When something wasn't right, I felt it and I definitely followed my gut. That is a huge, huge lesson for me. And it has been so worth making mistakes, going against my gut, and then saying, hang on, and going with my gut has probably been my biggest lesson. Trusting
Yes.
it. And actually, it's about trusting yourself. and the decisions that you make. That's the great thing, because my business is just me. I don't have to confirm it with anybody. I don't have to ask anybody for anything. I don't have to ask people if it's okay, because it's my business and I get to make those choices. Now, when I'm working with other people, like coaching, stories, ghostwriting, I do have a responsibility to the business owner and to the author. And that still is okay, because my gut is still in play. You know, hey, how does this sound? Does this sound okay to you? How would you like to do this? So that has been a big lesson. And I have to say, I'm very proud. I'm very proud that I learned that, and can use that in life.
Oh, those were amazing tips. And I'm going to say that I wrote them down because I wanted to like slow down and go through them. And then I pressed something on my iPad and they all went away.
Oh no, because I wanted to know what those were.
I know. And the first one you said, I'm trying to go back, was even
Oh, failing fast.
failing fast. Yes. I think that is such a, I mean, we know as business owners that first of all, failure is feedback, right? So taking it anything other than that is, you know, that'll first of all mess you up if you look at failure as anything other than just feedback. But really failing fast is such a great lesson for business owners, because when you fail fast, then you can shift, pivot, learn, move forward, and you know, go in the direction that you need to. I think that is so powerful. I love what you said about also like, and I just needed to stop networking.
Well, okay, so I learned a lot, and I will forever be grateful to Calling Biggs with the Leap community. They took me in, she took me under her wing for real. They have creatives in the group, but
Yeah.
I learned the business of business. And at some point, she also runs a business mastermind one Tuesday a month. And somebody said to me, what in the world are you doing? You have no
Mhm.
time to do anything else, because I really was networking too much. And last year, I did end up meeting somebody, and I learned about relational networking. And I have to tell you, Kelly, that feels so much better. I
Yeah.
do not have to meet everyone in the room. I do not, I had to miss something Friday morning, a networking event. I have to miss something tomorrow morning because it's something else. And on Thursday night, I said to myself, okay, you're going to make life so hard for yourself on Friday morning if you try and go to a networking meeting before you go to a training session. And it was again following my gut. I was like, you know what? You're going to have to let this go. Who's ever there on this coming Friday? It was a chamber event. They'll be there next month or the month after. And so I am very careful of my time. If you saw my calendar, there's days crossed off for writing days, for working days, for outreach days, for research days. I cannot be, I can't be networking 3 times a week.
You know, can you share with us, for people that do want to write or become a better writer, I mean, can you share your expertise just on how do you develop a good writing practice?
Well, there's a lot of answers to that. Oh, people always ask me, do you write every single day? And there are a lot of those best-selling authors who they will say they sit down every single day
Yeah.
and they write for 3 hours. That doesn't actually work for me. What works for me is living life. And when I was writing the column for the Post-Dispatch, I would walk on it. So I would have an idea and I would walk 2 miles and I would come back and I would have a first draft. Whatever works. Do you need to go hiking, biking, dancing? If it works
Yeah.
for you to sit down at your computer every single day for an hour, 4 hours, do that. For me, when I get inspired, and I tell people this all the time, when I get inspired and I start writing, sometimes what happens, I'm writing, it's sun shining outside, and I look up and it's 9 o'clock at night. And I'm like, wow. So once you get into a flow, whatever that is for you, go with that. When I had little kids in the house, obviously I couldn't do that. And I was writing when they were at school. But I also tell people, this is a secret, don't ever trash anything or throw anything away.
Yeah.
Whatever you write, put it
Yeah.
in a folder somewhere,
Yep.
because I guarantee you the one thing that you delete or trash or
Yes.
throw away, that's the thing that you're going to want, even if it's really bad
Yeah.
writing. And I actually go back to some of my old stuff and I read it and I think, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like your writing will change. Is the more you write, the more you put it out into the world and the more you learn. I also really believe that writers have to be readers. So
Mhm.
whatever you like to read, I love getting really cool emails. I read Maria Shriver's Sunday paper from start to. I used to read the Oprah magazine from start to finish every month. Now I read Maria Shriver's online. Talk to other writers, see what they do, but don't force anything. That is an aha moment. Don't ever force anything. Now, here's the other thing though. If you have a deadline, you need to back yourself up and give yourself a schedule. Because if you are a writer and you have a deadline and you miss one deadline, they will never trust you again, ever.
Mhm.
So I back my deadlines up actually 3 days. So if something is due,
Mhm.
like something is due for me on Friday, it will be to them by Wednesday, bar nothing. Um, because you are responsible for that work. So whatever works for you, if it works to pen and paper, if it works for typing, I actually think really well at the computer. Some people like to audio record and then you
Mhm.
can transcribe it. Whatever works for you, whatever practice works for you, and let it be free. Just do not judge it. If you need help putting it together, that's when you reach out and someone can help you. Just try and let it go. The more free you feel, the more creative your writing is going to be.
Yeah, I love that. So I'm a part of National Speakers Association, and a lot of speakers are writers as well. And because you got to get your talk somehow, so usually you write it first, and But anyway, we were just talking about this, and a guy from St. Louis, he said that one of the biggest tips that he heard that I absolutely love is that he said, never finish a paragraph if you have more to write. So if you stop in the middle of a paragraph, when you go to read it the next day, like when you're going to start again, you will like finish the paragraph. If you stop at the paragraph, then you're like, what am I going to say next? Where am I going to go with this? But where if you kind of stop in the middle, then you automatically know what's coming next, and that gets your juices going. And I was like, oh, that's a good tip. Yeah.
It's definitely a great strategy because sometimes you're ready to write. So sometimes you have this great idea and you sit down and you're ready to write and you're like, okay, what was I thinking? So whatever that is, just
Mhm.
get it down wherever that is. And what I really like to do, I always let things rest for 24 hours before I publish it, post it, send it to the person it's due. I always let things rest because after 24 hours, you're going to feel differently about it. And then when you come back to it 24 hours later, that's when you can also be more creative and you can add to it. And some things just are so glaring to you. You think, oh, that needs to be moved or taken out.
Yeah.
So let things rest for 24 hours if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And then what advice then do you have for perfectionists, right? Who are just like, uh, you know what I mean? Because it's like they want to be perfect the first time, which is not going to happen, right? I mean, I've learned that for sure. Like I'm the queen of editing because just get
Right.
something out there and then go back and edit it. So,
So the thing I say about that is when we're working with anthology chapters, I think they get three touchbacks from an editor. At some point you have to say, this is good, I'm going to leave it alone in terms of editing.
mhm.
Um, what I also do sometimes is I go on to a different version. So I leave the version that I've been working on and I copy it somewhere else and then I work on that. And that gives me the freedom to keep that first original version that is probably done, and go play with it a little bit. I will also tell you that people who read what I write, and I remember these comments, somebody said to me, it just sounds like you're talking to me.
Mm.
Well, yes, I am. And
Yeah.
do you know how many that went through 10 versions? That went through 10 rounds of edits. That is the point. That is my voice. You are reading it easily because I want it to sound easily. I want it to sound as if I'm just having a conversation with you, but you're not seeing the duck madly paddling underneath the water. So I actually am not an over editor. I never have been. I actually know when it's ready to go.
Mhm.
I've always I've always been really happy about that. I have worked with perfectionists before, and when you're helping somebody write a book, that you cannot rewrite a whole book. I did have that happen. I think she wanted to like change the whole thing at the end, and we said you can't do that. Um,
Yeah, not enough time for that.
well, at some point you have to walk away from it.
Right.
Otherwise, I mean, it's sort of like when you're icing a cake. You can always go back there, and at some point, you're really going to mess it up. And
Yeah.
so, one of the versions that you have is probably very okay. But
Mhm.
here's the other thing I always tell writers: if there is whatever you write and put into the world, make sure every single line is something you don't mind being asked about, because there's one thing in there that you are kind of iffy about and you don't want to talk about. That's the one thing that your readers are going to say, can you talk about this line? Can you talk about that? So I always say to people, whatever you put into the world, be very comfortable with it, because that is what you're going to be asked about. So if you are unsure, take it out, put it in your next version. Whatever you put out in the world, you have to own it. That's another aha moment. You have to really and truly own whatever you put into the world and
Hmm.
stand beside it, because
Yeah.
someone is going to come back and say, well, we didn't like this or we didn't like that. And for you to say, well, this is the reason why. And that happened because I pitched an article to an editor and I said, I'd like to write about a high school reunion, with 4 women. And she said, what is the value in that for everyone? And I said, the value is that you can circle back around and find your friends. You can talk about the friends that you're still friendly with. You can go back out and just become friends with your high school class. And it turned into one of the best things I've ever written. And I had to really stand my ground. She's the editor, of the newspaper, of the column. She could have said, forget it, we're not going to do this. And yet she trusted me enough to let me write it, to read it. And we did put it out into the world. And so I stood my ground in the most appropriate professional way I could. And by then she did trust me, but I also heard what she had to say, because she always, that's the other thing to say. Who's going to read this? When I was
Hmm.
writing about kids in suburbia, there were other parents reading it. I'm not reading that stuff anymore because my kids are grown-up people. So really, no, it's like when you're in business. Who's your ideal client? When you're writing, who is your reader?
Yeah.
You have to know
Yeah.
that, because then your voice is going to come a little bit easier and you can almost picture the people reading what you're writing. And that I think is very important.
Yes, it is definitely so much easier to do any form of communication as a business owner when you social media, email, however you're communicating.
Mhm.
When you have your ideal client nailed down, you know exactly the one person that you are speaking to, and then just having a conversation with them.
Mhm.
Then it makes everything so much easier.
And
Yeah.
that works with writing too. If you know,
Hmm.
like when I wrote that last piece, I knew that my friends, the people who always read stuff, they were going to be like, huh, yeah, I understand that now. And then interestingly enough, I had somebody read it I've just become friendly with, and she texted me and she said, I want to get unstuck too. I'm like, okay. So never
Yeah.
occurred to me that that's what she was going to. And the funny thing was, she said, I want to get unstuck in the same story you're unstuck. And I never would have guessed that in a million years. So also putting it out into the masses and hoping that it lands in somebody's inbox in a way that
Yes.
they can respond to it.
Yeah, that's great. So, what challenges do you face as a business owner?
Well, my first year, um, it was very hard to figure out who my ideal client was
Hmm.
and find them. That was a huge challenge. Believe it or not, that happened the second time too with the whole brain work. The biggest challenge also was keeping everything in balance.
Yeah.
Um, I remember somebody said to me, I'll help you make 6 figures. I'm like, well, since I have made nothing this year, 6 figures would be a huge improvement. Um, it wasn't all about earning the money though. It was about putting good work into the world and doing good work. And so the challenge was figuring out what that good work was going to be for me. Um, and that took a lot of soul searching. There was a lot of pivoting. There was a lot of pivoting. And I had to really keep a balance in my life. A lot of times freelance writers, again, we can write all the time anywhere. And I guess another challenge was I can shut down. I do try and shut down by 6 o'clock every day. And I don't work on weekends unless there's a huge deadline and somebody
Hmm.
really needs something. But I think the challenge is finding a balance.
Yeah.
A really good, healthy balance. And that has taken me a couple of years. Balance with boundaries. That's not my crisis. Sorry, you got it to me late. I'm not gonna be able to get
Hmm.
it to you tomorrow till tomorrow. Taking really good care of myself, getting outside for fresh air, doing yoga, dancing, seeing my friends, having good food. Those are the challenges I think when you're a business owner. And I was always concerned about being a business owner. That was a challenge for me too. It took a while for me to really own that I had chosen to do that, even though I had an LLC. Um, that was a challenge. It was a challenging year. I had a lot of support, a lot of really good friends and coaches that were great. Um, I think the more I kept things in balance, the better it all felt.
Yeah, that is actually one of the biggest challenges for people that I interview is the whole balance. Because as business owners, we go into business doing something that we absolutely love. And so it can be easy to not have balance because we're doing something that we absolutely love, right? And so really keeping that in check and setting boundaries, and for me, I look at the clients that either come with too loose of boundaries or too rigid boundaries, because either are going to cause stress. If you don't have boundaries, stress. If your boundaries are so inflexible that, you know what I mean? Stress also. So it's really, as a business owner, finding the healthy boundaries for you that work for your lifestyle. If you have a family, whatever that looks like, but those healthy boundaries that then create the calm and the ease of life.
That's a really good point. Calm and ease, whatever that means. I will tell you earlier today, I took a dance class because for me, that's balance because I worked all morning and it's an amazing dance class. And I knew I was going to work this afternoon. And I literally shut down for the hour that I was gone. And it feels okay. In the very beginning, that didn't feel okay, but as time has gone on and maybe I've gotten older, and I've watched interesting enough, I've watched other people do it. I've listened to boundaries. I'm sorry, I don't attend meetings at night. I'm sorry, I'll be on your committee, but I will not go to a meeting. I'm not available at that time. Or no, that won't work.
Right,
Because as a business
right.
owner, you don't want to turn anything down. On the other hand, I had a friend of mine, life coach, say, if you agree to do something you don't want, you are going to be resentful. And so
Yes,
I arrange
yes,
meetings. I am very
yes.
cautious. I always have my calendar out and I never squish things in anymore. I was doing that a lot, about that networking. And so boundaries are really, really important.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I think boundaries and balance, I'm going to write about that because balance is hard. Boundaries are hard. And yet you live calm and ease. That's the whole point is
Yeah,
that
yeah.
it's a beautiful day. Okay, last week it was a gorgeous day. I worked all morning. A friend called and said, "Do you want to just take a quick hike?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." So we hiked for an hour. I came back and then I worked the rest of the day. Well, if you're a business owner and I didn't have any business meetings, I did have a business meeting later that day. Um, but calm and ease, and also after a while, for me, I have to have a life. It can't
Yes,
all be one or the other. And I
yes.
think that's what I'm learning the most. And I
Mhm.
so appreciate the universe for just listening to me and letting me make all those mistakes and pivots and saying, here, how do you want to balance things?
Yeah,
How do you want to balance? What are your boundaries?
yeah. My word for 2024 is ease, like living a life of ease. And for me, the ease is embrace, align, simplicity, and elevate.
Ooh.
And that's, how I want to live in 2024. 2025 could be different, but 20 that's the goal for that's
Well,
the
then
goal
you
for
know what?
2024.
I think my word for this year is balance. I think
Yeah.
it's taken me a long time to find balance, and
Hmm.
I am very, I'm used proud 3 times in this interview, but I think that finding balance and living balance, I think it's going to make me a better writer, a better person, a better
Yes.
business person, a better
Yes.
friend.
Yes. Yes. That's for sure. Like, I mean, I think that's a big aha is when people, especially business owners, find balance, you have more space.
You do.
And when you find balance, typically with that comes emotional clarity, mental clarity, and
Mhm.
that really allows you to be more present,
Mhm.
to be more creative,
Mhm.
and just tap into things that you're not tapping into when you're a stressed out, running around crazy person.
No, I mean, that's really true. Somebody a couple of months ago, or maybe that first year, said to me, "Well, are you writing?" I said, "I don't have time to write. I'm too busy
Right.
networking. I'm too busy trying to make sure that I get enough sleep." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Oh, yes,
And a
yes,
yoga teacher
yeah.
said to me, "That's when you need to come into the yoga room because that
Uh-huh.
will slow you down." And I never miss her class. And
Hmm.
she is very, very right. You cannot be your creative self or your best self
Yeah.
if you're running around stressed. You're just not going to be. So I know a lot of people who no longer live that way, and they're very balanced and they're very happy. So I agree with you that you can be much more creative and successful, whatever that means to you, by being balanced and having
Yeah.
boundaries. I love that.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to hear what you write about it. Okay, so for you, what is one accomplishment that you're really proud of, and maybe it's balance, or maybe it's something different that you'd like to share? I know one of them, and I didn't mention this in your bio, is when you also said, I'm just bringing back some of the things that I heard you say, balance. I also heard you say when you wrote the SOS article, just loved that. Congratulations to your success. And I really did envision you as Carrie Bradshaw doing this. What else? What's another accomplishment you're really proud of that you'd like to share?
That I think that I'm still here doing what I really am supposed to be doing. It took me a long time to really embrace the fact that I'm a creative and that I'm writing. And when I got into the business world and it was a lot more challenging than I thought, I kept pivoting. I didn't keep changing my mind. I
Hmm.
kept going with the flow. And I think that is a huge accomplishment. I kept going with the flow to learn something and to figure out for myself what brought me joy, what
Hmm.
actually brings me joy. I think that's a huge accomplishment, is taking me, my middle name is actually Joy. And they must have known something. Um, I think that's a huge accomplishment, is to find joy and live in the moment. I'm very, very good at living in the moment. I happen to be, I will put the phone down. I will be with you if I am with you. I really think finding joy is a huge accomplishment, regardless if the business is uber successful, right?
Yeah, right, right.
Any of the businesses. But joy can be found in a lot of different things. It's joyful to talk with you. It's joyful to know that we have become friends. It is joyful to know that I can put something into the world that might bring someone else joy as well,
Yes.
or calm, or
Yeah.
balance.
Yeah.
Um, I think, I like that. I think a big accomplishment for me is, I think maybe understanding joy, which is innate inside myself. It is not anything around. It is
Hmm.
just what I am doing and how I am feeling. And that's really huge for me.
Yeah, I love that. So Pam, where can listeners follow you, read your writings, get in touch with you? Like, what's the best platform? Are you on all platforms? Do you prefer one? Tell us your social media, websites, whatever you have. How can we connect with you?
I do have a website. It's wilsonmentoringandwriting.com, or wilsonmentoringwriting.com. Sorry, I always get the email wrong.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Wilsonmentoringwriting.com.
Yep, it's fine.
And I have a personal Facebook page, and I also have a professional Facebook page, which is Wilson Mentoring and Writing. I am also on LinkedIn. Through the website, you can contact me. There's an email on there. I do post all of my writing on every Facebook page I have. For LinkedIn, I am just putting pieces of different things that I've learned on there. But I'm learning about the LinkedIn presence. But you can get a hold of me any of those ways. Usually, I will. Here's another good balance thing, Kelly. I don't have Facebook on my phone.
Mm.
I also don't have my work email on my phone, which means that I have to actually be sitting at a computer to open up Facebook and to open up my work email. So those are the best ways. And I would love to talk to anybody who's interested in writing their stories, writing a book, and getting involved with ghostwriting. Also for whole brain thinkers, for any kind of, I actually offer a complimentary lunch and learn. It is an hour. You bring the lunch, I bring the fun. There's all sorts of experiential activities. And with all of my whole brain work, there's always a writing piece to it, which was very new for whole brain work. There's always writing with that. But I would love anybody who would like to get in contact with me. I'd love to talk to you. Love talking about writing, and anything else that you might want to talk about. I would love that.
Excellent. All right. Thank you. And I will put all of those links for everyone in the show notes so that it's easy for people to find you and get a hold of you. So, Pam, I just want to thank you for bringing your wisdom of the writing world today and your experience, your expertise to our show today. And thank you for sharing. It's been a pleasure interviewing you today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. It's been a lot of fun. I so appreciate you asking me to be here and for interviewing me. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, listeners, check back in next week for another episode of Rise Up and Live. And when you listen to this episode, please forward it to anyone that you know who is interested in writing, might need a ghostwriter, wants to just hear what Pam and I discussed today. So we'd love for you to share this and be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're listening to it through YouTube, or just to become an avid listener if you're listening to it for podcasts. All right, thank you. Have a great day. Rise up and live. See you next week.
Thank you for being a part of the Winning in Business podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to rise up to your next level of success, but are worried about increased stress, time for work and yourself and your family, not to mention being exhausted, I'd like to invite you to a complimentary strategy call where I'll show you how you can do it all. I'll help you reclaim time, keep your sanity, handle the chaos with ease, and move to the next level of success that you deserve and desire. I hope you found value in listening today. Please always leave your comments, feedback, or questions. We check them all. I want you to continue winning in business and reach your next level of success. See you next time.